Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening from wherever you are in the world. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh from Durban, South Africa to the world. I am Bibi Amina Fidi and this is Let's Sit Down. On today's edition, we speak about the menace of drug addiction. And joining me to have this conversation is the director and co-founder of Refocus and Upliftment Foundation, Mr. Ebrahim Dawood. Mr. Ebrahim Dawood, Jazakallah so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. So let's get straight into the conversation for this particular afternoon. The question that we all want to know, what is drug addiction and the causes?
Drug addiction, there's 4 stages into addiction. The first is experimentation. A drug addict is very seldom that they start and they get hooked once at the first hit. Although it's possible, it can happen, but generally what happens, the first stage is the experimental stage. That's the first step. Then you get the social, when they are in social gatherings, when they're socializing, that's the second stage. Until the first, you still got control because you experimented. You may have liked it, you may have not liked it. For example, heroin, you may have liked it or you may have not have liked it, but then you try it again because of social gathering and friends and let's just have a good time, so you socialize. That's the second step. The third step is when you say, okay, it wasn't too bad, I'll have it every, now and again, whenever it's friends. But the third step, I'll have it, okay, I'll have it maybe once a month or once a week at regular intervals. So the first is experimentation, the second stage is socializing, and the third step is regular. Until that point, you have some level of control. When you get into stage 4, that is addiction. When you are not in control anymore, your life has now been taken over by this thing called drugs, and it totally consumes you. You surrender your existence, you surrender your values, your level of controls, you surrender your family, you basically sacrifice
Yourself.
everything. You sacrifice unconditionally to this thing called drugs, where even if your beloved, your family, your mother, you can see what it's doing to your family, but you're totally consumed by this addiction. Addiction is when you are not in control of your life anymore. Your life has now been taken over by this thing called drugs, and then it's like falling into a bottomless pit.
Absolutely. Now, I know what you did in your first, the question I asked you right now, you did give me a brief explanation as to how quickly can somebody be, addicted to drugs. But give me something in depth. How quickly can somebody be addicted to drugs?
You see, we've met cases where, crack cocaine is a drug that you probably will not, they call it eat some more, because once you take it once and you're hooked. You cannot stop it, and you can smoke crack maybe weighing to thousands of rands, and sometimes you could even dehydrate, even cocaine. You take it once and that's it. And in some instances, heroin. So yes, it can happen that you take the drug once and you're hooked onto it immediately. And it just goes out of control.
So how do we know if a family member, a workmate, a friend is addicted to drugs?
They are different, but the general way of observing this thing is we will find there's a loss of weight, loss of appetite, erratic behavior, extreme mood swings, unexplained absences, sudden disappearance, always running out of money, always borrowing money, stealing, unhygienic, lack of sleep, and you look at their appearance, they start to look very run down. Then there's something wrong and it needs investigation.
Absolutely. So in your view, was the legalization of cannabis in South Africa for personal consumption justified?
No. You see, I would say cannabis for medical purposes, if it is and offers some type of relief for some type of sickness, then I would say it's permissible. Because we know cannabis to be a gateway drug. If you look at a child that's going to school, in most cases, from our experience, people that are involved in addiction generally start off with dacha. And cannabis is the gateway. So yes, I have. It's not a good thing, because what we're saying, it's legal. You can. Although there are lots of conditions attached to it. You cannot smoke cannabis in a house without your permission of your family. You cannot inconvenience other family members because of your own wanting to consume the drug. You first need to be consented, and of course, you cannot. There's a lot of legality surrounding it. So it's not legal as per where you can just smoke it anywhere. You must smoke it in your own confined area, and you cannot just smoke it anywhere in public or whatever. So they are, but they haven't really finalized the actual, the actual act on smoking cannabis. But we are saying it's a gateway drug. And cannabis, you get different types of cannabis with different THC levels. So, some of them are are actually up to 100 times more the THC level, and it's more potent. You become totally psychotic. It's not like the cannabis that we used to get, where the people just grow it, the natural, the natural grown one. These ones are engineered in laboratories, and these are dangerous stuff. So we are saying cannabis, the one reason I would say it's not acceptable is because it is a gateway. When somebody young will try cannabis, they will want to then upgrade.
And get something
Because cannabis, you
stronger.
get to a point where you don't feel it anymore. You smoke more and more and more, and then you want something to give you a better high.
Extra kick.
So you'll graduate. So we say it is a gateway drug, and for that reason, it's not
So,
acceptable.
what are some of the consequences of legalization of cannabis in South Africa?
The consequences is that it's going to be smoked more widely, and the thing is, it's going to be the gateway. It's going to lead to, it's going to escalate to other drugs being abused, because, like I said, cannabis is a starting point. In addiction, when you start to develop cannabis, you start to develop a personality to suit your addiction, addictive personality. So cannabis eventually will shape you, or in other words, it will walk you into other drugs. So the consequences of smoking cannabis is escalating to other hardcore drugs, which we know is totally unacceptable to society and humanity.
Okay, so what are the long-term and short-term effects that drugs does on a person and their mind?
The effects of addiction is all round. It's health, it's psychological, it's physiological. It affects your spirituality. It affects your communication with your family, with your community. It breaks down relationships. It destroys homes. It makes you. It can make you sick. It can damage your health. It can destroy your social standing. It breaks you down completely. If I have to use the word very crudely, it makes you like an animal, where you are totally dysfunctional, and it just leads you into a miserable and unacceptable personality. We have mothers coming to us and they say, my son, he was such a lovely boy. It's the only son. Some of them come, they were the only son. I say, but please don't send him back home. I don't want him. I love him, but I can't have him. For a mother to say that I don't want my son home will tell you how unacceptable that personality has become. And that is why we are saying drugs destroys every part of your life. Everything. Your connection with your people, with your creator, with yourself, with everything. It destroys.
It just disconnects you from the world.
It just breaks you down. Allah says in Surah Al-Teen, Allah creates man in the best of forms. And Allah says, I lower him to the lowest of the low. I put him to the lowest of the low. That's a drug addict. You cannot. Animals will show some compassion. I walked into I don't like to say this, but I walked into a pig farm. And I remember seeing all this, you could see who was the mother, because she was, all the little ones are running, and you could see who was the father because he was watching me. He saw me as a foreigner coming within his safety area or infringing in his safety zone, and he was watching me. And the pig, the mother was grazing, and when they wanted to suckle, she just lay on her side peacefully, and the father was just there. Now a drug addict, when he gets paid, if he's on cocaine or crack cocaine, if he gets paid, especially during now the silly season, he's not going home. He forgets about his family, his wife, his children, he forgets about his responsibilities, he forgets everything. And next thing, he's gone. Animals don't do that. We become like subhumans. Total breakdown and destruction. But one person's addiction can destroy an entire family.
Now that was it for part one. Don't go anywhere as we come back for part two as we continue our discussion on the menace of drug addiction.